What's up guys, Austin Newman here, and today we're going to be talking about the editing walkthrough for Sunday Drive, the recently released short film that I put out here on my YouTube channel. If you haven't seen it, you can check that out up here in this card above. I got a lot of really great comments on that film, a lot of support, and a lot of people who were asking how some of the transitions and the cuts were made, and I promised in my community tab poll last week that I would be doing an editing walkthrough. So I'm going to be walking through from start to finish. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this editing walkthrough. Alright, so we're now inside of Adobe Premiere Pro. I've got the full Sunday Drive short film queued up on my timeline here. We're going to be walking through most of these effects and show you how I got this look. I am going to be walking through this without the music for the most part because I want to be able to commentate on these effects. But if you want to check out and get the full experience of the film, I do recommend once again going to check it out up here and come back to the workflow if you want to see how those effects were done. Alright, so I'm just going to start from the beginning and play through. That right there was a glitch texture. It's something else I offer in my VHS overlay pack. I believe that's glitch 3. Yeah, glitch 3. And then I just went to the blending mode under effect controls and I chose screen. And I laid this part where it covered the entire frame over that transition to kind of smoothly transition from one to the other. This right here I also got some questions on as far as getting this footage into this little box. It's actually pretty simple. I would just go to my project panel over here, go down to my new item, hit color matte. 1920 by 1080, so that looks good. So what I like to do is do like a white background. You can also do like a dark gray, any color you really want, but I just feel like these contrast the best. And I'll go with something like off-white, like D1, D1, D1. So we'll create a new color matte, lay that onto our timeline on the bottom layer, and then you just simply take your footage. So I have this dice footage here. I will just scale this down to 75%. Just like that. So this right here, this is a slow motion clip. In fact, everything in this film is for the most part shot in 120 frames a second HD on the Sony a6300. And that right there, that effect that you see is called a speed ramp effect. This is something that I like to use to transition between shots, especially when the motion is going particularly the same direction. I'll even take this footage, this raw footage I have, for example, that's not color graded. This is 120 frame a second footage. Now, if you don't know how to interpret footage, I'll go ahead and show you really quick. We'll just right click on this footage, go to modify, interpret footage. I'm working in a 24p timeline, so I'll just assume this frame rate to 24 frames per second. I'll just take this, lay it into my timeline, and if I want to be slow-mo up until about this point, I'm going to hit C on the keyboard to bring out my cutting tool. I'm going to cut that part, and I'm going to speed the rest of this out. Let me just zoom in on the timeline here. I'm going to hit R on the keyboard to remap my time, and then I'm going to grab the end here and then squish this in as much as I can because that's actually going to be the speedy part. So let's actually bring this up just a little bit more. We'll get this effect. And that's how I like to speed ramp. I feel like it serves as a really good transition. A lot of times you'll see me use that a good bit throughout this video. As far as the texture over it, once again, VHS overlay pack, I think that's the medium texture. So after this part, all I did was simply just reverse the time. All I did was just go in here to speed and duration, and I just clicked reverse speed. And most of this film, I like to go in reverse, and then I switch the directions a couple times. So this right here was a simple horizontal flip. I just went to effects, and I just type in horizontal flip, drag that onto your clip, and it will flip it, just like that. Playing on through this film here, we're just going to go through this right here. This is something I got a lot of questions about. This is an Rgb split effect. I've done this numerous times on this channel. So what I want to do first off is split this footage. So I'm going to hold down Alt on my keyboard and drag up to duplicate this layer, drag up to duplicate this layer. I have an Rgb split preset pack you can find up here. I'll go ahead and link, and I can just drag the bottom to bottom, middle to middle, and top red to red. Now I've split this footage. It's not really going to look any different until I change some things up. But for this last footage, and actually the cool thing is now that we have Adobe Premiere, the April edition, we can actually go through here and use a reference file here. There we go. Okay, so it looks like my bottom channel, I did a complete vertical flip. So let's go vertical, drag that onto our bottom layer, horizontal. For the blue channel, it looks like I just did a horizontal flip, so drag that to the middle there. And for the red channel, I just did a speed ramp really quick. So I'll just hit C on the keyboard and cut it right there. Hit R on the keyboard to remap. I'm going to drag this in a good bit. And just so everything looks normal, I'll bring these in as well. And then if you play through, you get the same effect that we had before. And moving through the footage here, this is just another slow-mo shot. This footage of the dice here, this is something I got asked a lot of questions. Now for this one, I've already RGB split the footage, so I won't go through it again for the sake of the length of this tutorial. The top channel is our red channel, and we're gonna add a frame hold on that. To do that, we just click on the top channel, right click, we're gonna do a frame hold, and that'll add a frame hold right where our playhead is. We play through, and it'll add a frame hold right there. So make sure to play around with that one a bit. Then I just made a couple cuts on the music here, and I slowly zoomed in and I rotated. So I would just scale it up about 10% or so. So I go to 110, and then I do a rotation very small so that each of these kind of seemed like they were cranking to the side, just to give you a kind of different perspective of each of these events. The next thing I did was another slow time remapping. So we'd start here, and then you see a quick remap to the back of the car, another remap right here, then another remap to the Oldsmobile logo. We're going to keep playing through. That right there, that's an RGB smooth slide, I guess you could call it. So what I did was I just RGB split, and I just moved all of the footage up at one time, and you get this really cool trail effect if you put a motion blur on it. So for example, if I put this building footage here that's already been RGB split, what I can do with this is you can see it's kind of linear dodge add. So what it's doing is it's actually showing the footage underneath. There's a couple things we need to do in order to make this particular effect work. Since I've already RGB split the footage, I'll go down to my bottom layer, and I'm just gonna hit transform under my effects just to find transform. So let's see where that is. Under distort, transform, drag that onto your bottom clip. We're going to go down to the bottom here, and now we just want to keyframe the position of this. We're going to hit a keyframe at the very start of this. We're going to go over 5 frames with the right arrow key, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to set another keyframe. This is the one we're going to move the right value all the way down to a negative number. So you want to get that off the screen as we saw there. And I'll change the other channels in a second with an easier method. We're going to go down here to use composition shutter angle. Click off for that because we're going to use the 180 rule, and that's going to give us a nice motion blur once it exits the frame. Now one more quick thing we want to do to this is we want to select both of these keyframes, right click, temporal interpolation, Bezier. That's going to smooth out this motion for us. We're going to click this, toggle this little arrow down here next to the stopwatch, and I'm going to hit the plus to zoom into these because what we want to do is actually make a nice little ramp effect for it exiting the screen. So we'll drag both of these down to the same level, so right about there. And we want it to exit slower as it moves on. So what we want to do is have most of the speed at the beginning. In order to do that, take this right value here, which is this keyframe, and we're going to drag it to the left. As you see, it's going to speed up off screen and then slowly exit it at the end. What we want to do is we actually want to copy this transform. So I'll hit Command C on a Mac to copy this, and we're going to paste this right here onto this second one and then on this top one, which are all 3 channels. And what we get when we see that is it's going to look a little odd at first, reason being the linear dodge add. So in order to make this footage look normal, we would go to the bottom footage that we're actually going to be revealing with this transition, which happens to be the actual film that I have here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this opacity down to 0. And now we're going to give it about a 1 or 2 frame spread. So we'll go to the right with the arrow key, 1, 2. Let's go about 3, and then we'll take the opacity back to 100. And now as we can see, it's a little bit smoother of an effect. However, we're not really getting the full RGB split effect. So all I would simply do for that is I would just move a couple of these channels around. So let me just zoom in here. And I'll move this one back 1 frame. And I'll move this one, this blue one, forward 1 frame. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us that effect. Moving on through the timeline, I have another thing that I've gotten a few requests on, which are these vintage blinds. It's a really cool effect you could do really easily. So I have this palm tree footage that's raw and ungraded. It's right here on my timeline. I've also RGB split this footage for the sake of this tutorial, and I've slowed it down to 24 frames a second from our slow-mo 120 frames a second. What I want to do first is go to the red channel, which is our top channel here, and under effects, I'm going to look up horizontal flip. Grab that, apply that to the top. That's going to give us a nice red-blue gradient that gives us that really unique look. The second thing I want to do is hit R on my keyboard to bring up my remapping tool. I'm going to speed this up slightly, so right about there. Now what we want to do is hit V on the keyboard, and I'm just going to shorten everything else so it doesn't have that weird hang off the side. Now that we've applied this effect to our footage, now let's actually add that really cool blind effect. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to select all of these, right click, and I'm going to nest these so that we can apply one effect to all of these. And nested sequence 31, that looks good. So now we have all of this in one file. Now that we've nested it, there is one thing to mention. If you wanted to put footage underneath this that isn't like an alpha channel, like black or white or something like that, and you wanted to put other clips underneath this, it's not going to react right. It's going to look a little bit different and blown out because of the linear dodge add that's created. It just doesn't work as well when it's nested. So just keep that in mind. But what we are going to put underneath here is a white card. So we'll go here to the project, and under our color mat, that white background we created earlier, let's drag that underneath. Now in order to get that blind effect and to match it to the music, we would just simply go through, let's say there was a beat here and like right here or something like that. So if we go to the first one, we'll go to our effect controls, and with this nested sequence selected, we're going to go under opacity and we're going to select this 4-point polygon mask. That's going to create our mask right in the middle there. I'm going to grab this point, hold down shift while dragging out, and that's going to keep it nice and level while we drag this out. Do it to each of the corners. Now that you've dragged all 4 corners off screen, what we want to do is go to the feather and take this down to 0 to give us a nice sharp look to it. And then we're going to just move this mask up to the top. I like to use our safe margins here. So we're going to drag this up and we're going to drag this to the action safe. So right about there. This is what I use as a ruler for this. Now I've made our first placement. Let's say the next beat cut is right here. So we'll just hit C on the keyboard and cut that nested sequence right there, keeping that first mask. And now at this second mask, what we're going to do is going to go back to the 4-point polygon mask, and we're going to do the same thing to all 4 corners here. Drag them right off screen. Now that we've dragged all of those 4 corners right off the screen again, we're going to go back down to the mask feather and take this down to 0 to give it that nice sharp look. And let's say the last beat cut is right here, so we're going to hit C on the keyboard and cut it right there. We're going to add one more mask, drag that to the bottom of our action safe, as we can see here. Drag all 4 corners off to the side. And then we're going to go down here to mask 3, and we're going to take the mask feather down to 0. And that is how you get this effect. And moving on through the video, this is just another speed ramp to the left side, so it kind of looks like it's moving inside the car. And here's another building. I just match cut those two. And this right here is a quick mask reveal. So we have our building footage on the timeline here. So I'll go back to my effect controls. Under opacity, we're going to create another 4-point polygon mask. And we're actually going to drag each of these corners off screen, again, holding down shift to keep the bottom edges straight, so that you're keeping these sides as level and straight as you can. We're going to hit the up arrow on the keyboard to go to the beginning of the clip here. Click on the stopwatch to set a keyframe, and then we're going to play through. Let's say we want to fully expand right about here, so set another keyframe, and we're going to expand this out until it fills the entire frame, so about 440 for me. Now we're going to select both of these, right click, create a Bezier keyframe. That will smooth out this motion a little bit, as we can see. And this down here is our velocity. This is the speed in which this expands. We want it to expand really slow starting off and then really ramp up at the end. So we'll just take this right here. So it starts off slow and then ramps up at the very end. And I think that looks a little jarring because of the clip underneath. So let's move this up just a little bit just to speed that up, and that looks good. And rounding off the last part of the film, we have some more slow-mo, we have some more palm trees, we have some more slow-mo, me reaching for the palm trees, another scale effect going down to 75%, a VHS overlay that slowly fades in. I did an opacity 0 to 100 in about 2 seconds or so. And then we have another VHS glitch effect to end the film. And that's how this film was made. Of course, with filming in regards to that, I just took my camera out on a Sunday drive. I shot everything that I could. I had so much footage that I didn't even use. You just have to take your camera out and just shoot. You have to train in order to be a better filmmaker, and that involves going out there and shooting. So make sure to go out there and shoot this weekend. Share some of your edits with me on Twitter at @ANewmanFilms. Subscribe to this channel for more filmmaking and editing tutorials just like this one with post notifications on. And until next time, guys, we'll see you later.